Hey everybody, welcome to Raising Vibrations and your assignment today. So in today's video, we're going to be looking at the solar eclipse in Sagittarius, and this is going to be for the 4th of December 2021. So this is a new moon, and it's going to be setting intention for the next 30 days and how we're actually going to develop a deeper sort of flowering of the insights that are going to come along with this Sagittarius solar eclipse. So I've got two things to quickly say. One of them is stick to the end of this video because there's something I want to announce. And the second thing is you'll see that this video is broken into chapters. So if you want to come back to this video and process things that are, really real for you right now, you can use the chapters and interact with them. Also, something in me feels that there's a really strong desire to want to talk in depth about this solar eclipse. So, I really encourage you to come back to this video at different points and sit and really digest, what it is that I'm really sharing here, because there's a lot of things that I want to cover in this video that will touch upon themes that we're dealing with, but also kind of set the stage for how this solar eclipse is going to have a tremendous impact on the next 6 months for us. So for those of you that are new to this channel and to astrology, when we have a solar eclipse, we have a portal of information and awareness that is very, very illuminated. It's like highly activated. There's a massive flashlight in the sky pointing to whichever archetype or sign the solar eclipse is landing in. So in this case, it's in Sagittarius, whereas a lunar eclipse is where there is darkness, and for the next 6 months, we really get to become aware of the absence of awareness that is or was in that area. And that was, of course, in Taurus. So today we're talking about the solar eclipse in Sagittarius. And 2 weeks ago, if you go check the channel, you'll see that there is a lunar eclipse video. Kind of put those two together to get a sense of what the next 6 months will be like for us, okay? So me and Jen, we've been discussing this solar eclipse, and here's what we think could be beneficial not only for our own personal lives, but also for how we can best serve you and the community, and how you can use this information to be able to process your reality, make sense of it, and at least in some way allow the inquiry into your own personal soul's journey become more illuminated, okay? So this theme of Sagittarius, look where it's located in your chart, right? The 4th house, the 10th house, and you can even write that in the comment section if you want to, like, hey, it's landing in my 4th house, I'm dealing with this. It's always good to kind of read where everybody else is dealing with this. For me, it's in the 11th house of the astrology chart, conjunct my south node. Okay, so what is the message of the overall kind of message of the new moon in Sagittarius as we see it? And so there is a few things, there's a few labels that we've put here. So I would say the first thing is inner truth. Okay, the inner truth. And to break this down, for just over a year and a half, we've had the moon's nodes, so what is called the nodes, right? They have been moving through the signs Sagittarius and Gemini. And of course, during that time, we've also had the nodes aspecting, forming a relationship to the planet Neptune in Pisces, and that was for a period of time as well. So what that does and what that means is that we have been exploring and experiencing the emotional landscape of how we as individuals and as a collective form our perceptions of reality. Okay? How do we form our perception of reality? How does reality for us get constructed? The Sagittarius, the Gemini, the Pisces component all has to do with the way that we collect data from our environment. We take that data, we analyze it, we filter through things that are relevant and that are not. This would be the Virgo part. And then we would see fragments of truth in that, Sagittarius, that would lead us to further investigation, and we would start to begin to perceive the world or the experience, Sagittarius, through the lens of the data that we've gathered and the analysis of that data and the purification of that data. That's the Virgo process. And so when we take the Sagittarius symbol and we shoot the arrow into the distance, see the arrow there, what you get is an experience of what the territory is like, right? What is the terrain like based on the perception of our experience? So what is the direct experience as opposed to the analytical observation or theorizing of it? So the Sag leads us to direct experience, the adventure, to witness the truth, yeah? And so when we have that experience, when we go through the adventure, when we have the real life experience, our nervous system and our body simulates that, and we have a Pisces moment, a Neptunian or a Pisces moment, where we get to directly experience it for ourselves, we get to see things for ourselves, and we close the circle of the way that we gather information, Gemini, we discern it, Virgo, we explore it, Sag, and then we have a moment of realization or meaning, Pisces. And that's the what is called the mutable signs. And this is what we have been as a collective and individually moving through when these nodes have been in Sagittarius, Gemini. We've been forming our and constructing our ideals and our truths according to what information we can perceive in the world. So adding to the idea of inner truth, this solar eclipse speaks to the illumination of what we have been doing while the nodes have been in Gemini and Sagittarius. So individually for you, the question you want to ask yourself is, how has your perception of reality been shaped over the last year and a half? What truths have you revealed about life and about yourself and about the world? And how have those truths become deeply illuminated for you over the last, say, maybe 3 days, right? And probably heading up to this actual solar eclipse that will take place now. So that's one dimension of it. Another dimension of this, and this has more to do with the kind of collective awakening and realignment to an Aquarius age theme of reality, which is very much that as we awaken to the state of reality that is beyond just the physical, i.e. we understand that we have this inner emotional journey that we're on, and our life is a representation of what is within us, then how has the last year and a half, Sagittarius, Gemini, nodal axis, been supporting the discovery of your inner truth, right? And this is an interesting thing to explore, and this is what I meant earlier about coming back to spaces. So one of the things that's been very clear is how technology and certain social media platforms can influence our perception of reality based on the algorithm, okay? So if you expose yourself to a certain thing, and then by exposing yourself to that certain thing, you start to build certain confirmation biases that lead you to form a reality according to what you've just perceived. And so one of the interesting things that I think is very profound with the Sagittarius new moon, for those that are exploring deeper, more complex states of reality, is how we as human beings are experiencing a world where, on one hand, our biological nature is designed to look at a shared reality and to agree that in that shared reality, those circumstances or situations occurred, right? So we both stand, or three people stand in a parking lot, and one car bumps into another car, and you can have this shared kind of conversation where everybody saw that and there's an agreed kind of, yeah, that's what's the truth. Sagittarius, right? Perception. But because we live in a world that has gone beyond the capacity for us to only be in one place at one time looking at one thing, to being able to see one thing but have such a diverse series of perspectives or ways of coming to a certain point. So I live here, you live across the world, we see an article, we see something, and we're not seeing the same thing in the same time-space reality. We're seeing it from our own perceptions that have been formed based on our own things that we've influenced it by. So this Sagittarius new moon for me has really brought through the illumination of how we as a society and as a world not only develop our truth based on the expansion of technology and how it can give us such diverse perspectives at such fast periods of time, but also our ability to not know that we have certain biases towards things that we can be, Sagittarius, very fanatical about. Yeah. And so this Sag archetype that I'm also inquiring you to look at is, while this is about inner truth and the exploration of inner truth, be mindful of the fact that what you may consider to be your truth may more so be a collection of confirmation bias perceptions that reinforce a narrative in you that needs to be resolved. Like when I say needs to be resolved, I mean in the sense that you can have a certain grief response, an unprocessed trauma that's rooted in a victimized patterning, and the perception of truth that you perceive to be the truth is actually more of a reinforcement of a deeper pattern within yourself that needs to be healed. So that's really complex, and I've shared something there, and many of you might understand what I mean, some of you might not. That's okay. The idea here is to just question whether or not this is actually the truth for you, or a shared experience that through confirmation bias reinforces your own fanatical perception as opposed to what you actually see to be the truth. So that's something interesting there. Because the Sagittarius solar eclipse lands in, of course, with Mercury as well, and Mercury being the North Node ruler, we'll get into some chart work soon. And we have Venus about to make a connection to Pluto. Venus is currently in Capricorn. It's going to connect to Pluto, and then it's going to retrograde. And so we have Venus in Capricorn while this solar eclipse energy is being formed into our awareness. We've got to ask ourselves the question, again, because, and I'll point it out as well, we've got Jupiter, which is finishing up its pattern in Aquarius. And we all know for 1 year, Saturn and Jupiter have been very close together. All right, so you know that last year they had the great conjunction take place between these two planets. And Saturn is the archetypal principle in our reality that talks about structure and form and how do we organize things, bring order to stuff. And then we have a Jupiter, which says what's the moral landscape to which we can have a shared agreement of how the order or the structure must be. And if you just look in the world right now, you can very much see that these are very challenging questions that we as a world face in our different societies, right? Now, with Jupiter about to culminate or end its cycle in Aquarius, it's forming an aspect towards the nodes, as in it's forming a square. Again, I'll show you this in the chart, to the nodes. And when you have a planet that is squaring the nodes, what will happen is that we will be in a state of limbo, where we're on one side kind of relating to something that feels secure and familiar, and then the other side trying to step into something that feels unfamiliar but is necessary for equilibrium or balance to take place. Because within the context of this universe itself, it's very difficult for things to be imbalanced, right? They can be imbalanced, but it manifests distortions. So there needs to be an equal force in order for things to be at singularity or at peace. So this Jupiter retrograde that's coming on over here is really going to point to the part of us, not Jupiter retrograde, pardon me, this Jupiter leaving Aquarius, squaring the nodes, going into Pisces, this whole entire pattern, and that Jupiter is associated with the solar eclipse in Sagittarius. Sagittarius is the archetype that is ruling Jupiter and vice versa. You can see that the complexity that is real for us right now is two things. So inner truth, what's your inner truth? Okay, you've been working on that for the last like the year and a half, and particularly when we've had the solar and lunar eclipse in Sagittarius, Gemini over the last 6 months. We've been working on what is your inner truth, what is your alignment about, what do you value, right, versus say the other person. But when we take that component and then we interface with the collective who are trying to do the same thing, we have this very interesting dynamic and dilemma where it's very difficult to find relatability with those in our most immediate environment. That's one. Two, how do we form structures of conversation, interaction, order, moral landscape when the state of truth or perception of truth and everybody's individual inner truth have such wide scopes, right? There's such diversity in that sense. And so the answer to that is not necessarily definitive, but it is something that is in alignment with what would be perceived as the age of Aquarius, which is more group-orientated, community-orientated landscapes popping up, where people's individual resonance with the group become the attracting force. And so we move away from a shared collective, one society ruling structure to more of a landscapes of pocketed community structures that hold at the center of it the truth and moral landscape of the individual, A, and B, also the scope in which those rules and regulations want to be defined and structured. And so where we are right now in relation to that landscape of sort of pockets of community group oriented people is the earthquake. Not funny, but funny, right? We are at that earthquake point where the fracturing is taking place, and it's organized, and that fracturing is organizing people in these natural places. But we will learn to experience it like that. We don't see it like that. We see it as our lives changing in ways that we don't want it to because it threatens our comfort zone, trying to form relations with people who have nothing in common with us in that sense, and then, trying to, glue it all back together because change frightens our more mammalian part of our brains. So it's interesting to observe the way in which the astrology at the moment is reflecting this massive collective shift that's occurring, and the way in which we're responding to it, which is one, Pluto through Capricorn, Venus in Capricorn, Venus retrograde in Capricorn. And what those symbols mean is, how are we waking up individually and then collectively through revelations, which is the Sagittarius part, to the truth and the matter of things. So the matter of things is the Pluto question. It's the Venus retrograde in Capricorn. Okay, and then the Sagittarius part is the truth of these things. And you can see all over the world right now, there are pockets of deeper questioning that is arising within communities and within people, and saying, is this really the truth? Or is this an illusion or a fantasy that I am a part of? And so here comes the second part of the Sagittarius message, which is dependency to the world. Okay, dependency. And I want you to all go and take a moment to, after this video, to contemplate where dependency is in your life. Where do you have dependency in your life? How do you depend on things? Okay, because the nodes that are going to shift into Scorpio Taurus along with this Sagittarius energy here and the Venus retrograde that's going to take place, we're being prepared right now, like this is the initiation phase, for becoming illuminated around where our attachments are to the structures and whether those attachments render something meaningful, purposeful, and are supportive to you, or have, in a sense, this is the Pluto question, run its course, become senescent, no longer hold the fabric of reality. Okay? And this is at the core of it, with Pluto transiting through Capricorn and Venus retrograde in Capricorn. And remember, Taurus is the archetype that's associated with Venus, and we have Venus retrograde in Capricorn, and we have the nodes moving into Taurus. The question will be, where are your dependencies? Now, we have dependencies as human beings, not only biologically because of our more mammalian part of our brains, the limbic system. We have dependencies on things. But as adults, if we think about the whirlwind of change that is taking place because Pluto has exposed the archaic nature of our structures and institutions and governmental procedures, in the wake of such chaos, the question that is on everybody's mind at a deeper, more conscious level is, how free am I from the inevitable chaos that could come my way because of the collapsing structure, right? So in a very simple kind of down-to-earth way, what we're looking at here is, this is an opportunity, if you've been doing the work for the last 6 months particularly, to and more so, because I get a lot of questions, you know, why are we doing so much work? I thought I was doing this work. Why is it continuing? And the answer to the question is, this is a period of time of incredible transformation. Like, I can't reiterate that enough. This is not a stage where we're like waking up every single day and responding to maintaining the structure. Every single day you're waking up to the potential to mutate or transform or completely eliminate something within your life that no longer represents your true self. And part of that is the disillusionment of a false sense of self that you've needed to put on as a way to interface with the world. And that's why this is a revelation, because it's the awakening of our deep unconscious and more emotional patterns towards a structured reality that has become senescent, is fading away, is no longer here, cannot hold the energy for what is present for us right now. So the more inner work that you can do on yourself to become less reliant on as many external dependencies as possible, you're actually putting yourself in a really good position. Because when things get threatened, you know, you're not as affected. We all are going to be affected. We all are already being affected. Supply chains, etc. This is one aspect of it, right? But these things are real and present for us. And this energy at the moment speaks to the going back, Venus retrograde, into your value structure, core beliefs and truths, and asking yourself, where do I have essential attachments that I can become aware of, become conscious of? How many of them render necessity for me and how many of them don't? And then from there, begin to look at the philosophical structure or way of looking at the world. Okay, to begin to build a philosophical or way of looking at the world, right? A cosmology that's rooted in removing as much dependency as possible from the outside world's need to support that. Okay, and we have this. We have that. There are one of the ways that this is kind of being how the heat is turning up is how much you are being failed by structures of reality, institutions, because they can't meet the need of the demands of the world as it is today. And technology, on one hand, is actually like really bringing that to the surface. And so it's a really interesting, deep thought process that comes along with this energy at the moment. So for you personally, if you can just want to take away what, something practical from this conversation, I would say over the next 4 to 5 days, look within yourself and ask yourself the question, where is firstly the solar eclipse, what house it is, because then you can understand your personal karma. And then secondly, begin to look at where are you walking your inner truth? Where are you holding your own sense of reality and sense making in yourself? How do you define your reality? How do you perceive it in a way that is in alignment with your core truth, right? What are the essential needs that you have in your life? And how do you build a life direction and core structure in yourself that supports that inner faith system or that inner structured system? Okay, cool. So I think it's about time that we go over to the chart work and jam a little bit over there. But before we actually do that, I want to share something with you quickly on the screen over here. And this has something to do with Neptune going direct. When Neptune goes direct, we often experience states of spirit or inspiration arriving back into our lives relative to the absence of it. And 2, we also experience a subtle kind of disillusionment where we come to terms with an ideal that we may have, sort of deeply merged with or bonded with as a way to feel, I don't know, something within our lives that matters. And this direct, whenever Neptune goes direct, it oftentimes points to a recognition that something that once had meaning has no meaning. So things will fade from your life, and you will start to notice, and this is what I encourage you to do, is pay attention to where the sense of spirit or inspiration is coming out, right? Where it's kind of starting to want to come to the surface for you, and you're wanting to feel, you're just feeling meaning arise in a different direction, okay? And so on the picture on the left over here, it says there's 2 places you need to go to often, which is the place that heals you. So this is a very big part of its energy right now. What is healing to you, creating meaning in your life, and the place that inspires you. So with Neptune direct, what inspires you is a beautiful question to ask yourself. How is that in accord and alignment with your inner truth? And how does that heal you on one level? And on another level, how does it bring you closer to your own spirit? That's the place that heals you, okay? So kind of invoking those things there. And then the picture on the left-hand side, on the right-hand side, with regards to the mirror, and it's kind of like Neptune wants to shatter the illusions that we take on board for many reasons, to protect ourselves when we're a child, when we're at a childlike state, to give us a hope or meaning when there's despair. And so this Neptune will also bring to us, when we move to those places that heal us or those places that inspires us, we become less like the broken mirror and more like the organic true self, because we align with things that are deeply meaningful and real for us. Okay, so here's the solar eclipse that's happening on the December the 4th of December 2021. And as you can see over here, I'm going to point out for us, here is the Jupiter. There's the Jupiter in Aquarius, and there we're looking at the South Node. So the South Node is in Sagittarius, the North Node is in Gemini. Remember earlier I was talking to you about these 2 placements. There's the South Node, okay, and there's the Jupiter, right? So the nodes will actually move into Scorpio, and Jupiter will move into Pisces. So we are currently at the moment having Jupiter square the nodes. And again, when Jupiter squares the nodes, it's a kind of flip-flopping between the parts of we want to see things because they make us feel secure and comfortable. And then there's information that can cause us to question whether or not that's actually true and if we have convinced ourselves. So with Neptune going direct, what we're experiencing is the potential for illusions to be shattered so that we can become clearer on what is real and authentic for us. And yet at the same time, if you notice here, let me just point the little thing. If you notice here, there is the sun and the moon at 12 degrees Sagittarius, and I drew it up. There is an inconjunct all the way to Uranus in Taurus. And that aspect, what that aspect does between Sagittarius and Taurus, is it is the aspect in the astrology that, particularly between Sagittarius and Taurus, is when we feel that our beliefs are being threatened. If we think about like our core beliefs, right? If our core beliefs are challenged, the ego sense of ourselves feels threatened at a survival level. And that's why fanatical behavior is found within like religious ideals or ideologies or truths, because at a more primitive level, it threatens our sense of safety and security, because it's our security towards that worldview or that view that gives us an ability to cope with reality. So right now, you'll see a tremendous amount of information and revelations arrive to the surface, and you'll see a spectrum of Jupiter square the node themes of certain people who will accept the truth and see it as what it is, and then certain people who will struggle to see the truth because it threatens something primal within them, and they reinforce and double down into their own belief systems and ideologies, right? And that's why I opened up the conversation today with question the nature of the attachment to the truth you are reinforcing for yourself. Okay, so that's that. And so that's part of this, and we'll be kind of going through this over the next 6 months, the swinging between information coming to the surface in the collective and in your own personal life, processing it, having illusions shattered, becoming clearer about what things are real and not, and then sort of moving along, right? That will be a progressive pattern that will take place with the solar eclipse for the next 6 months. And the question is, I would say, actually, fear, right? Just putting it fear over here. The fear part would come from the Uranus and Taurus. And the intention with the Uranus and Taurus is to really bring to the surface where we may still like hold truth in us that is attached to a fear response, as opposed to, say, what's really there, right? We may believe something or hold or reinforce a truth because it stops us from fearing something deeper within us. Okay? And Uranus wants to kind of prod and poke at that and say, is that true? Is that true? Is that true? Okay. And then if we look at the Venus retrograde, which we will be doing some content on coming forward, plus we will also be doing content on the nodal shift as well, so stick out for that. In fact, this would be a good time to let you guys know, if you haven't subscribed to the channel and you like this content, you think it's relevant for you, make sure that you hit the subscribe button, because it tells the algorithm that this information for you is good. And so, just like I said before, kind of reinforces your own worldview perspective of things. So by helping the channel grow there as well, okay? So we'll do that, and then of course any content that we actually release, it will be made available to you and you can watch it. Okay, so Venus retrograde, they're coming up to Pluto, and what we're looking at here is Venus retrograde will point towards a period of darkness that we will reflect on the core essential values that each and every single one of you, including me, will subscribe to, okay? So on the collective, this will feel like, and individually, this will feel like very much a period of darkness within ourselves. And the idea here with this Venus retrograde is to really explore the dependency conversation that I was having with you earlier, right? We're interdependent on many things, and we will be exposed. What will happen is we'll be shown where the dependency is, okay? And some of that might be fun to get rid of, and some of it might not be fun to experience. So it's kind of a mixed bag over here. Simultaneously, this is not a transit to be feared, right? It's a transit to see how for many people, how the attachment to an archaic system no longer serves the needs. And so it needs to be it needs to go through a state of revolution, and that revolution will promote eventually a structured reality that can actually support where we actually are, as opposed to where people were when the established structure was put in stone, right, or was laid out. So the revolution in the way that our societies have been structured. Okay, so last thing that I'm going to point to over here, I mean, you've got again, some cool trines that are taking place, of course, with Chiron and the South Node. Again, that's just supporting our journey towards freeing ourselves from attachments and structures that no longer represent or mirror back to the people where they can feel supported by. And again, this truth will progressively make cracks in these systems and institutions to reveal their agedness, to put it that way. Okay, so the last thing, in fact, that I actually do want to mention, and here this is something that's super cool, is the archetype of Taurus, which is sitting here, not Taurus, but the archetype of Scorpio, Capricorn, and Pisces. There's a sextile that takes place between Venus, Neptune, and Scorpio. Okay, there's a sextile that takes place. If you look over here with my little things, you see Venus over there. It's sextiling Mars, and you can also see Venus sextiling Neptune over there as well. Okay, so you can see that there. So what do sextiles do? Well, they're supporting mechanisms. Okay, they're supporting aspects. And what they do is they prod us to invoke evolutionary intention in the archetypes that are present. So the archetypes that are present are Scorpio, Capricorn, and Pisces. They are prodding Neptune, Venus, and Mars. And the symbolic representation of those archetypes is that they create a metamorphosis process. So what do I mean by they create a metamorphosis process? The best way to understand those archetypes is to see the process of a caterpillar going into a butterfly. Okay. The Capricorn part is the structured nature of the caterpillar, the butterfly, and the chrysalis to which that caterpillar goes into. That's the structured part. That's the definition. We can say this is a caterpillar because we define it that way. The Neptune part is the essence of that specific vibration. So the essence of a caterpillar is something that crawls, it doesn't fly, and the essence of it is that it can also mutate, right? It can dissolve itself in and regenerate itself into something that is of a different life form. And so the process of metamorphosis is reflected in the Scorpio part, because what you're seeing here is the caterpillar's structural nature dissolving through Scorpio. It's dying, genetic material is changing, and then you see a regeneration into something completely new. So if you look at Neptune, Mars, and Venus in those signs, what you see here is the shared collective experience within the collective, and that's the Neptune part, where the meaning and the purpose, the felt sense in the definitions of our world have faded. And what is left behind is the revelation, it's the truth, it's the witnessing to the fact that the way in which we have structured our world up until this point in time is no longer supportive. And we are standing witnessing the different ways in which that manifestation of those things take place. You can think of Australia, for example, you can think of the States, you can think of all over the world. Institutions and structures are trying to hold themselves in a place, and yet the very nature of the energy is fracturing it, saying we must innovate. And so where are you innovating within yourself? Cool. So that's where I'm going to leave you with that today. Right in the beginning of this video, I said stick around because I've got something to share with you. I really do. I'm super excited about this. Both me and Jen are putting together an Astrology School package where those of you that have been wanting to study astrology with us, of course, you know that we've closed that down. But right now we are in the works. We're planning something really, really good. And we're going to be releasing this at some point very soon. And so if you are interested in that, if this is something that is what you want to do, you want to study astrology with me, and you want to be part of the Astrology School, then we've got a link just beneath this video, and you'll see that it is a link where it's a waitlist, it's an early bird waitlist. And if you put your name and your email on that waitlist, we can then inform you of the stuff that we're doing behind the scenes, as well as when we're actually going to release that as well. And so you can have access to that, okay? So if you want to study astrology with us, we're doing something in the background. I can't wait to share that with you. And if you put your email and your name in the link below, if you click on the link, we'll let you know how that's going out, okay? All right. And I'll see you in the next video. Bye.